Hey everybody, welcome to Art Lounge Alley. This is Figure Drawing Basics, part 75. I'm your host, and I am going to start today's session. I'm going to continue from where I left off yesterday. Whoa. Whoops. And that was this figure right here. And for those of you who are just tuning in for the very first time, we are focusing on shading right now and what the face looks like in light and in shadow. And these are just diagrams showing you guys basically where the light source is when it comes to the small diagrams and what the light source looks like on the face, and what sort of detail you're going to see that is going to be in shadow, what the detail is going to look like when it is illuminated. So this example just shows where the light source is directly on the face. So I just have this here to demonstrate for you guys. It's very similar to the light source. But as you could see, it's directly on it. Whereas, you switch it around, certain parts of the face fall in shadow. Whereas here it's directly on, and you could see that the parts that are getting shadows is underneath the cheekbones, because again, the cheekbones are protruding out, and the peak of the cheekbones are catching most of the light, creating shadow underneath, blocking any light from being able to illuminate that part right underneath it. Same thing for the nose. As you could see, the nose protrudes out, and it is the most prominent feature on the face. So it's going to get a lot of the highlights. You're going to see a lot of the light on top of the nose here, but underneath it, you could see it's casting a shadow. And also, you could see on the chin as well, parts of the lip, just like the thin line right above it, catching some light. Notice that the upper lip isn't getting that light as much. It's actually casting a bit of a shadow underneath it, but the lip on the bottom is catching that light, giving it some highlights in certain areas, and shadow underneath the lip as well. So this example shows that. It shows you guys that certain features are in shadow, but for the most part, most of the features on the face are in the highlight to midtone range. So it goes highlight, midtones, and shadows. Your three shades that you have to think about when you are doing shading. So in this example, it's directly on the face. You could see that it's under the nose, primarily under the chin and the upper part of the lip. Then we got this one right here, and this diagram shows an extreme. So in this diagram, you're basically, what you're seeing is this. You could see how extreme it is that most of the left side of the face is in shadows, while everything on the right is receiving the highlights and light in general. So you could see like this line right here demonstrates the highlight, how much light it is catching. It is the peak basically of the face, so it's getting the most amount of light. You could see how it is transitioning over to this side, and it's slowly, well, it's actually dramatically going from light into shadow. Same thing here. You could see that it's transitioning, and then it's just falling into shadow and underneath the chin as well. It's the same pattern that it follows. I do encourage you guys to get one of these models. Like if you're not going to play with clay, I took some time. I have some clay. It's not too expensive. I think it's like maybe $10 that I got, like a big chunk. Maybe it was a little bit more, but it's inexpensive. It's not a lot. And I highly encourage you guys to play around with it, to really try to construct a face that is realistic, so that you could use it for this exact reason. You could study it. You can have it in in light, change it around its position, study how the light ends up affecting the face features. It's a great way, as opposed to being restricted to photos. If you're looking at an image, it's only in the angle that the shot has been taken. It's only in the light source that the shot has been taken. And to find images that are exactly like the same model, same face in different light, you have to do some digging. But the other perk to it is that you really start to understand the face features, how to construct it, having to study and be like, this part seems a little bit too flat as opposed to this side, compare it, put it in light and see where certain features are protruding out more than others and try to make them even. Because just like in drawing, if you draw the line down the middle, it's the same idea. You want to make sure that both sides are equal to each other, that everything is proportionate, everything is divided in half and mirroring each other. So same thing would apply here. And it's just a great way to understand the face, understand all the different features on there. You're doing kind of the same thing when it comes to the pencil. You're constructing the face. But if you have a better understanding of it three-dimensionally, you understand the purpose of certain shades, certain lines that are placed on the drawing. And when you're observing other drawings, you could also understand it better because of that, because you understand the anatomy and the face in 3D. Like essentially all these lessons and all these previous sessions that we've had was basically to do that, is to construct a three-dimensional understanding within your mind's eye, in your imagination. Just have this model that you can change in any position, imagine it, and be able to sync your mind's eye to your hand and translate it onto the paper. So this really does help. It does speed up your understanding a lot more. And they both go hand in hand. What you draw you're able to translate into sculpting, and what you're sculpting you could translate into your drawing as well. So do encourage you guys to take some time. I'm sure there's like tutorials online as well to give you a better understanding of how to mold things, or just sit around and play with it yourself. just try to understand the features, and just from your own understanding, looking in a mirror, maybe you could tell that when you're starting out, you're supposed to make indentations for the eyes, and then you could just plaster on something for the nose, similar to how you do drawings. You're drawing certain areas, and as I mentioned frequently, you create placeholders where you draw some sort of lines as an indication. Okay, this is where the nose is going to be, this is where the eyes are going to be. So the same idea goes here. You just plaster on certain things as placeholders and then shape them to be what you need them to be, either the lips or the nose or whatever it is, or the cheekbones. But it's a fun process, aside from it just being about learning anatomy, understanding the face better. It's fun to just pick it up and play with it. You're really not going to lose anything. In fact, you're gaining a lot of knowledge, understanding from it. But if you guys want to stick mainly to drawing, you don't want to venture out into working with clay, there are models online. You can actually even purchase a face or a similar head or something and have it there with you at your table, so that you can actually, as I was demonstrating, you could have it in profile, you could study it and try to draw those features. You could have it in 3/4 view, any angle really, any position. It allows you to draw it out as you see it, rather than having to rely on internet sources. Not that I'm saying it's bad to. It's just I find it to be a lot easier when you have a model in your hand and you could, maneuver it and position it any way that you want to. If you get curious and you're like, I wonder what the face features will look like if I have this position, underneath shot where it's coming from the bottom up. How do the face features change? How would I draw that? What if I draw that same pose but in 3/4 view? how would that look? You know, what am I seeing? How can I draw that out? And yeah, it's there for you to be able to, you know, wield, basically. Models move. You know, if you're drawing from a model, they end up moving, whereas this is it's going to move based on what you want to do with it, which is an excellent tool for studying. But all that stuff is very beneficial. Drawing from life, drawing from photos, drawing from models, clay models, all that stuff is great. And you could vary it up, you know, you could change things up, and in times it's really good to do that while you're practicing, while you're doing all this stuff, to bring a little bit more spontaneity into your work. You can just vary it by doing all these different things. Something I mentioned before is, if you're living in a city, if you're living in areas where you know, there are a lot of things going on, try to search for a drawing class. There are some that are free. There's some that are extremely inexpensive, maybe $8, maybe even $10. There's some places that specifically are open at night to drawing. So they have a model there. You just pay like, I don't know, $10 or something, or $5, and you're able to sit there for 2 hours or an hour, if not longer, and just draw from the model that they have. Which is a really good exercise. Is something I talked about before. You're able to put yourself in a position of more like challenge yourself. You know, you have a set amount of time that you have to do it in. How much can you capture within that time? And really try to focus and do the best that you can. That also allows you to speed up your process, to pay attention to certain details as quickly as you can. You know, just creating yourself new challenges. But yeah, just going back to this, so you guys saw in here in this example, it's an extreme form. I demonstrated on the clay figure how everything has these extremes, and the only part that really captures any light on the left side would be the cheekbone, because it protrudes out. So just going back to this, as you could see in this example, same light source. Everything on the left is extremely dark, but you could see here, right in that section, there's like a triangle, basically, because the nose is blocking, you know, and the angle of the nose, it's creating this diagonal shadow. That's making this like little triangle section as an opening for any light coming in this direction to seep through and hit this cheekbone. Notice how nothing else is really capturing it, because the cheekbone is the most prominent thing on that side of the face. Yeah, and then looking here, I mean, here I don't really have any eyes, which I guess it should be the next thing that I do, since I added the lips recently. But it's still the same idea. As you could see, they're deep set eyes, so a lot of the shadows are going to be in this area because of the brow line. This area, it's blocking anything from reaching this direction in this angle from the light source. You know, the light source is directly, it's not on top, it's on the side. So because it's coming from this side, anything that catches the light is going to block the light from this section here inside. So the brow's creating that. It's not allowing any light to hit this area, and also the light source as well. Both in combination create these dark shadows inside the eyes, as you see here as well. And then moving on to here, this is less of an extreme, so it's the same light source direction. It's coming from the left side, but this time, instead of it being really exaggerated and really intense, it's a little bit more towards the front. So it's going to be the front right. And it's similar to this one, but it just lightens up a little bit more. So you could see how that light is traveling further up or further in on the forehead, as you could see here, as opposed to here. And in this example, that's not the case. I hope you guys can see that better, but let me try to angle it so that way you could actually notice it. But yeah, in this example, it's very extreme. You could see that the left side of the forehead isn't really capturing that much light. And then once I lower it, making the light source from the top rather than the side, top right, all that becomes illuminated. So just to demonstrate again, you guys can closely pay attention to the gradual change. You see that? I guess I gotta angle it a little bit more, and you can see how the forehead is becoming more and more illuminated. The light is slowly traveling more towards this side, as you could see here as well. And the cheekbone, so pay attention to the cheekbone in this example. Really extreme, right? We're looking at this example where the light source is just coming from the right side, and I'm going to lower it, and you can see how the cheekbone slowly starts to get exposed to the light. See that? Gradually it's showing up. So you could see that here. It's present here. It's present here as well. I'm going to say the same thing for the lips. So here's the example with the lips, paying attention to the lips, right? And now look what happens to that shadow. So I'm going to start out here, and it's going to be similar to this image right here. Ooh, maybe a little bit too much. Just waiting to see how it shows itself in the camera. Okay, and now I'm going to lower it, and you're going to see how it's going to illuminate the lip area. Now you're going to see the light traveling to this side. So getting closer and closer. See that? It's starting to expose more, and the shadow is slowly traveling up to where the nose is. You could it gets illuminated in this area. What's another feature I'm going to say, and the final one is going to be the chin. So let's pay attention to the chin and what happens to it. So I'm going to bring it up again to this drastic drastic light source. And I'm going to lower it. And you guys pay attention to the chin and what happens to the light source when the light source slowly starts to travel towards the front of the face. You see how it gradually got lighter. So again, the same thing. I'm going to lower it slowly and just pay attention to the light source and what's happening to the chin in that example. It's the same idea. So as you guys could see, two different faces, right? Two different face features. But this idea of how the light plays on the face, depending on its light, on the direction, the light source, these features have the same sort of effect. So the cheekbone gets exposed, despite it not being exactly the same kind of cheekbone, right? The lips as well, the same, not exactly the same lips, the chin, but how the light transitions is very much the same. So it's just kind of like a fundamental principle of how the light plays on the face. Those features will start to reveal themselves in the angle of that light source. And then here we got this one. It's a little bit more difficult to demonstrate. The only way I could do it is by flipping the face upside down and showing you guys what the light source is going to look like when it's coming from below. But even in this example, it's not great. I'm really trying to demonstrate, but it's difficult. It's upside down. I can't really show you much, but I can say that the tip of the nose, the bottom part of the nose, is no longer in shadow, but everything above it is, like the lip area. The top of the lip gets light, as opposed to how it usually does, where it's catching the shadow, and the bottom of the lip, of the bottom lip, basically is catching. So everything is flipped, as opposed to how it is here. It's in shadow, so it would be in light. This is in shadow, it would be in light. This is in light, it would be in shadow. And this is in shadow, it's going to be in light. So you just kind of reverse it, or inverse it rather. And that's what we're dealing with today. So I'm going to spend more time just practicing shading, showing you guys like a smooth transition from light into dark, and the whole technique. So something I mentioned before, when it comes to doing these kind of drawings, when you're practicing shading, just know that nothing is as white as the paper itself on the face. This is a common mistake. It's a mistake that a lot of illustrators do who are also intermediate. Like, they have excellent rendering techniques, they have excellent attention to detail, but that's something that they overlook frequently, which is noticing that distinction is present. Like, it's never as white as the paper, and sometimes that flattens out the image, or most of the time it flattens out the image. You know, you'll see them rendering it and it looks amazing, but because of that contrast, because there are certain areas where they just left as white as the paper, it flattens the image. It just kind of breaks the illusion of 3-dimension there. So just remember, when you are rendering things, and that's why it's important to do gradual work. You know, start out light and then press harder. And I think a lot of people get intimidated by the idea of darkening their image, because they're like, oh, there's no way back. You know, if I press too hard and I don't get it right, then I can't reverse it. You know, I can't. It's gonna ruin the entire drawing. So if somebody spent hours and hours doing it, and then they have this fear, so they just keep it very light, it kind of takes them away from taking risks, you know, having to take it to the next level, kind of. And I suggest you guys pay attention to that as well. You know, when next time you're looking through Instagram and you find somebody who's doing like really realistic renditions of somebody, whether it's a face of a celebrity or whoever it is, just take a look and see if you could spot if there's really high contrast, meaning there are really dark shadows and very, very light highlights. Almost paper white highlights. And as I'm developing the shadows here, as I'm darkening those areas, it's giving me more opportunity to darken areas that follow, which gives this natural transition going from shadows to midtones to highlights, basically. And it can be a little bit intimidating when it comes to highlights, to want to darken them. Because again, you might ruin it, and it's not gonna make the image look good. But you got to take that leap, just have to try that out. And if you do it gradually, if you don't press too hard, and then a little by little, you're like, okay, this looks right. You could add a little bit more pressure, until nothing is as white as the paper. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do with this image. I haven't really done it as much with this one, but I think this will be a good opportunity for it because of the dramatic shading, or the dramatic shade on the face. And you guys will see how it really pops out in the image once you start really taking all these shades to the next level. The bridge of the nose is also getting a lot of shadow. You just have to be patient with it. You don't want to rush it. You don't want to start shading in way too much in one area. Just kind of work all over and gradually darken things up as you go. I'm going to start pressing harder. You could also use areas as reference. So for instance, if you drew one area and it's really dark, like let's say the bridge of the nose, you know for certain it's as dark, it should be as dark as this, then you could look at other areas in a drawing. It could be like, what other area in a drawing is as dark as that? And that allows you to like really gauge things. Now that I darkened that area right underneath the eye, I'm gradually going to transition it into midtones, into the skin tone. I'm going to start darkening the skin tone again. And now that this area is so dark, this looks like the skin tone. This is where the highlights are going to be. So you guys saw what happened in comparison to what it looked like in the beginning, right? It was almost as white as the paper. And now it's still light. It's still considered the lightest part of the face, despite all of it being shaded. And that's because I darkened up all these other areas here and here. The forehead. And you guys could see that I'm going over the same area, making it darker. I'm not pressing too hard on the pencil because I'm still gauging based off of the reference, like how much darker should I make it? You know, looking at the reference and its darkest points, and then looking at this area to compare and see, should it be darker? And that was also done as an example to show you guys that if you don't press too hard, it's not too late to erase and adjust things, even if it seems like it's a really dark shade. But if you press really hard, what ends up happening is the paper ends up having like this groove in there of you pressing hard on the paper. So even if you erase it, it's still deep in there in that groove. That's what makes it harder to come out. or be erased. It's a little challenging with the nose because it really does seem like, even in a reference, that it's like as white as the paper. So for those of you who want to see a comparison, you guys can just skip back to what the image looked like at the very beginning of the stream and what it looks like now, just to see what the transition was and how this skin color really changed from where it was. It was almost as white as the paper, and now it's still maintaining a highlight look, despite it being pretty dark in comparison. I'm going to transition away from the face and focus more on the neck to really finalize it a little bit. something I mentioned yesterday real quick was about practicing shading, practicing your 3-tone range, right? Mid-tone, highlights, midtones, and shadows in a sketchbook. And I showed you guys this one right here, just talking about you could use that opportunity when you're traveling, when you're at work or in school and you have time off or something. You could use that as an opportunity to practice these techniques. You could just go, just to show you real quick that demonstration, you could just do these simple exercises of going from midtone, highlight, midtone to shadows, just all over the page, or pick a basic object like this, like a circle or a cylinder, and try to bring it dimension, make it as smooth of a transition from highlights, midtones to shadows as possible. And it'll work in your favor for when you are doing projects of some sort or working on something more serious. The smoother your transition is between those different tones and ranges, the better it is for your drawing. It really pops out and gives it 3-dimension. Now there's a little bit more contrast when it comes to the hair because it's not a real face. This is also like a bust of a head. It's also done in, I think it's marble or stone. I'm not really sure exactly what the medium is based on the reference, but it is much lighter than any other part of the face. And again, I'm using the darkest points as reference, like so in comparison to here, like how dark is this area in comparison to how it is here. And that allows me to just keep it in a range, in a safe range, not making it too dark and also not making it too light. It's also a game of patience, as I mentioned before. Just gradually, little by little, working to darken up areas. Not doing it all at once. Well, ladies and gents, it is slowly coming to an end for figure drawing basics for today. But I will be back, of course, tomorrow, same time and place, for more figure drawing basics. I'm gonna probably find, oh, actually, no, there's like a couple of more busts to do, to demonstrate different angles for light and light source. So I'm going to continue on with shading tomorrow as well. It's probably going to go through for the rest of the week. I'm going to be focusing on light source and shading. And then starting next week, it's probably going to be a new focus. And looking at this area right here, it seems to be the lightest point. But in comparison to the reference, it's actually darker than any feature that's on the bottom. And that's getting a lot of light. So based off of that, I have some shading to do. I have to make sure that it's dark while darkening up other areas. And notice that throughout the entire process, I'm keeping it a distance from the tip of the pencil. I'm not doing one of these things. And it's really important, actually, in this process to do it because you want to compare and see the entire image. You know, when you're doing this, you're kind of obstructing your vision. You're really getting into nitty-gritty details. Whereas keeping it at a distance, it allows you to really travel all over the drawing, make broader strokes, you know, whereas here, you see the difference in terms of hand movement and as opposed to this. So there are multiple benefits to it. I just wanted to point out that this is where this position really helps. And as you can see when I erase there, still am able to take off quite a bit, despite it being a dark area. And that's just because I've been layering it rather than really pressing hard down on the paper. And that really gives the shadow softness. So despite it being dark, it still has a little, has some softness to it, which makes it easier for you to erase if you need to. So now I'm going to go into the areas that are supposed to be really dark and get into that. Alright, y'all, I don't want to get too much into this because I do have to end the stream to get ready for the next stream, which is the project stream. It's me working on something that I came up with from my imagination. Some character development, scene development. I'm pretty excited about it. You guys will be able to see that in just a few minutes. So stick around, and I will see you guys shortly.